Fading echo. Oliver. Preston's fingers hovered over the piano keys, trembling slightly in the empty concert hall. 3 months ago, these same fingers had commanded standing ovations from packed audiences. Now they faltered, uncertain, as hollow. As the space around him, "Mr. Preston, I'm supposed to lock up soon," Oliver startled, turning to see a woman with chestnut hair pulled into a practical bun standing in the aisle. Elise Winters, the conservatory's music librarian. He'd seen her dozens of times before, cataloging scores or helping students, always slightly peripheral to the vibrant social circles of the music world. "Sorry," he murmured, closing the piano lid. "Lost track of time." Elise nodded, her eyes briefly meeting his before darting away. "No rush. I have some filing to finish." She disappeared into the shadows of the hall, leaving Oliver alone with his thoughts. The accusations had come swiftly 6 months ago. Plagiarism, they said. His masterwork symphony, the one that had earned him the prestigious Harrington Fellowship, allegedly stolen from an obscure composer, his former student Thomas, had brought the claim forward. Armed with just enough circumstantial evidence to cast doubt, the investigation had cleared Oliver technically. But the whispers remained. His commission offers dried up. His fiancée Vanessa had quietly returned his ring, citing uncertainty about their future. The conservatory reduced his teaching load to nearly nothing. In the staff break room the next day, Elise sipped her tea, half listening to the conversation at the next table. "Such a waste," sighed Josephine from the administrative office. "Preston was brilliant," was being the operative word, replied Richard, the brass instructor. "I heard he's drinking heavily now. Missed his last guest lecture entirely. Tragic." Josephine continued, lowering her voice. "But there must have been something to those accusations. Where there's smoke, ... Elise's grip tightened around her mug. She'd spent countless hours organizing Oliver's original manuscripts for the library's special collection. She'd seen his compositional process firsthand, the crossed-out measures, the coffee-stained revisions, the marginal notes at 3 a.m. when inspiration struck. The alleged similarities were basic musical patterns that appeared in countless works. It was like accusing someone of plagiarism for using the word duh. That evening, Elise spotted Oliver at Harmon's, the dingy bar across from the conservatory. His normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated, unshaven, hair unkempt, wearing the same shirt she'd seen him in 2 days ago. She watched as he stared into his whiskey, occasionally jotting something in a tattered notebook before crossing it out violently. When he stumbled to the bathroom, Elise moved quickly. She slipped the bartender some cash. "His tab tonight. Won't tell him." The bartender raised an eyebrow but nodded. 2 weeks later, Oliver arrived at his apartment to find an envelope under his door. Inside was an advertisement for a part-time position teaching music theory at a small community college across town. Someone had circled it in red pen with a note. "They need someone immediately. Thought of you." The handwriting was unfamiliar. Oliver tossed it aside initially, but after another sleepless night staring at his empty composition sheets, he made the call. Elise watched from her car as Oliver emerged from the community college the following week. For the first time in months, his shoulders weren't completely slumped. It wasn't much, just 12 hours a week teaching fundamentals to beginners, but it was something. She started the engine, smiling softly to herself. It was a small step, but sometimes small steps were enough to begin the journey back from oblivion. And she would be there, unseen but present, helping to illuminate the path. Unseen Melody, the community college classroom, wasn't Carnegie Hall. But Oliver found unexpected solace in its humbler acoustics. Teaching beginners forced him to return to fundamentals, to remember why music had captured his soul in the first place. His students, a retired accountant discovering piano at 67, a single mother stealing hours between shifts. Teenagers with raw talent but no formal training approached music with an unguarded enthusiasm that slowly rekindled something within him. What Oliver didn't know was that his position had nearly been eliminated before he arrived. The music department's budget had been slashed. But a mysterious donation designated specifically for part-time music theory instruction had appeared just days before he interviewed. The department chair never questioned this stroke of good fortune, and neither did Oliver. Elise maintained her careful distance, tracking Oliver's gradual resurrection through casual conversations with colleagues and her own discreet observations. She began leaving carefully selected musical scores in his faculty mailbox, obscure pieces. Spoke to renewal and resilience, always with a simple note. I thought this might interest you. Someone keeps sending me music, Oliver mentioned to Frances, the community college receptionist, one afternoon. No name, just these perfect pieces I've somehow never encountered. Secret admirer, Frances teased. Oliver laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. More like a musical guardian angel. In her apartment that evening, Lise meticulously wrapped a package containing a vintage recording of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the composer's triumphant return after debilitating depression. She'd found it in a dusty record store and spent 3 weeks' coffee budget to acquire it. Tomorrow, she would have the janitor deliver it to Oliver's office while he taught. Meanwhile, Oliver's finances were crumbling. The community college position barely covered rent, and his savings were nearly depleted. He returned home one evening to find a letter from his landlord. Rent was overdue, with eviction proceedings to follow. That night, he pulled out the whiskey bottle again. The next morning, bleary-eyed and defeated, Oliver discovered an unmarked envelope containing exactly the amount he needed for rent plus 2 months' security deposit. The enclosed note simply read, "A loan from someone who believes. In second acts, repay when your music returns." "I can't accept this," he muttered to his empty apartment. But desperation outweighed pride, and he paid his landlord that afternoon. Spring arrived, and with it came an unexpected email invitation for Oliver to judge a regional youth piano competition. The modest honorarium wasn't the point. It was the first time anyone from the serious music world had reached out since his fall from grace. The competition director mentioned receiving a compelling recommendation letter detailing Oliver's exceptional ear for identifying promising talent. Elise had spent weeks crafting that letter, using her connections as music librarian to gather testimonials from former students who still believed in Oliver. She'd carefully disguised her involvement, creating the impression that multiple people had advocated for him. On competition day, Oliver felt a shadow of his former confidence return as he provided thoughtful feedback to young musicians. Afterward, several parents approached him about private lessons for their children. "You have a gift for teaching," one mother told him. "My daughter's previous instructor made her cry. You made her determined." That night, Oliver sat at his keyboard for the first time in months and began to compose. The melody was tentative, halting but undeniably his own. He worked until dawn, producing just 16 measures, but they were measures untainted by bitterness or doubt. Across town, Elise couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, wrapped in a cardigan, imagining Oliver finding his way back to music. What she couldn't imagine was him ever discovering her role in his recovery. Some things were better left in shadow, she told herself. Some forms of love were meant to remain unseen, but shadows eventually encounter light, and Elise's careful anonymity was about to face its first serious threat. The following week, the community college announced budget expansions, including a potential full-time position in the music department. Oliver would be the obvious candidate if he applied. The deadline was approaching, and he hadn't submitted anything. Elise knew she should let him make his own choice. Instead, she completed the application herself, forged his signature, and delivered it to Human Resources just before deadline. It was her most dangerous intervention yet, and the first that couldn't be attributed to coincidence or multiple mysterious benefactors. Some invisible boundaries, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Dissonant truth, 14 months after hitting rock bottom. Oliver Preston taught his first class as a full-time professor at Westridge Community College. His studio had 6 dedicated students for private instruction. The competition judging had led to 2 more invitations, and he'd completed a modest composition for piano and cello that was scheduled to premiere at a small recital. "Professor Preston, do you have a moment?" Oliver looked up to find Dean Hargrove at his classroom door, accompanied by a familiar figure, Lise Winters from the conservatory. Ms. Winters has proposed an exciting collaboration between our college and the conservatory archives, the dean explained. Special collection, focusing on contemporary composers who experienced career interruptions but created significant work afterward. Oliver felt his chest tighten. Fascinating topic, he managed, studying Elise more carefully than he ever had before. She looked different. He'd more confident, less peripheral. Ms. Winters specifically mentioned your current composition might be a centerpiece of the collection. Dean Hargrove continued, documenting your process from initial sketches forward. I'll let you to discuss the details. After the dean left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. I don't believe we've been formally introduced, Oliver said finally. Though you've worked at the conservatory for years, Elise Winters, she replied, offering her hand. Music librarian, an archivist. And apparently the curator of Career Resurrection exhibits, Oliver added with an edge to his voice. Why my work? There are more dramatic comeback stories. Your composition process is particularly well documented, Elise answered carefully. And the musical themes you're exploring, renewal, resilience, align perfectly with our exhibition. Concept. Oliver nodded slowly, a suspicion forming. Strange coincidence. The music world is smaller than people realize, Elise replied, not meeting his eyes. Later that week, Oliver found himself in the conservatory library after hours, ostensibly, to discuss the exhibition details. Elise showed him the climate-controlled special collections room where his manuscripts would be preserved. I've always believed your work deserved to be here, she said quietly, even when others questioned it. Something in her tone made Oliver study her more intently. You know, I never asked how that community college position came to my attention, or who recommended me for that competition, or who anonymously paid my rent when I was about to be evicted. Elise busied herself reorganizing folders. Sometimes, the universe provides what we need. The universe has very distinct handwriting, Oliver replied. I noticed it on the exhibition proposal forms. The same handwriting as the note that came with my rent money last year? Elise froze, color draining from her face. I should finish cataloging these, she said, moving toward the exit. We can discuss the exhibition tomorrow, Elise. She stopped but didn't turn around. The Rachmaninoff, recording the scores. The job application I never submitted. It was all you, wasn't it? Her shoulders sagged in defeat. You weren't supposed to know. Why? He repeated. 'Cause I heard your music, she whispered. The real music, not what they claimed it was. Before Oliver could respond, she hurried from the room, leaving him surrounded by carefully preserved musical histories, including, he now realized, his own. That night, Oliver couldn't sleep. He pulled out every mysterious note, every anonymous gift, studying them with new awareness. The pattern was undeniably deliberate, sustained effort to rebuild his life, piece by piece, not from guilt or pity, but from something deeper. The next morning, he returned to the conservatory determined to confront Elise, but was told she had taken an unexpected leave of absence. When he pressed for details, the department secretary mentioned something about a family emergency in Boulder, Colorado. Oliver recognized another evasion. He spent the day making calls to his new network of musical contacts until he located someone who knew Elise's actual hometown. By evening, he was driving toward a small house on the outskirts of Lakewood, preparing to face the woman who had secretly orchestrated his salvation and to finally understand why. Resident Discovery Elise's cottage stood at the end of a gravel drive, surrounded by wind chimes that created random harmonies in the evening breeze. Oliver sat in his car, rehearsing what to say, when the front door opened. Elise stepped onto the porch, arms crossed defensively. How did you find me? She called. Ironically, through connections you helped me rebuild, he answered, approaching slowly. We need to talk. Inside her home revealed more of Elise than Oliver had ever seen. Bookshelves overflowed with musical biographies and rare scores. A modest, upright piano stood in the corner, sheet music open to a complex piece he recognized as his own early work. You play? He asked, surprised. Not well enough, she replied, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of a teacup. I understand. Music better than I can perform it. Why did you do it? Oliver asked, no longer willing to circle the question. All of it, the job, the money, the recommendations. You've been orchestrating my entire recovery from the shadows. Elise looked away. You needed help, but not charity. Not pity. So you lied. For over a year. I never lied about believing in your music, she countered, voice strengthening. Everything else was ... logistics. Oliver repeated incredulously. You spent what must have been thousands of dollars. You risked your professional reputation forging my application. Why go to such extraordinary lengths for someone you barely knew? Elise stood abruptly and moved to a small desk. She unlocked a drawer and removed a worn program from a concert 15 years earlier at a small Midwestern university. My first year of graduate school, she explained, handing it to Oliver. You were a guest conducting your early composition fragments of Light. No one had heard of you yet. Oliver examined the yellowed program. I remember this. Tiny venue, maybe 30 people attended. 27, Elise corrected. I counted. I was 19, studying music history, unsure if I belonged in that world. Your piece, her voice faltered. It articulated something I'd never been able to express: how beauty exists in broken places. Oliver stared at her, seeing for the first time the depth of connection she felt to his work. After the performance, I changed my focus to archival studies, she continued. I wanted to preserve music that mattered. When the position opened at the conservatory where you taught, it felt like fate, Oliver supplied. Purpose, she corrected. I never planned to insert myself into your life. But when everything collapsed for you, when I saw what was happening, you appointed yourself my guardian angel. Elise winced. It sounds ridiculous. When you say it like that, it sounds invasive, Oliver countered, anger finally surfacing. You made decisions about my life without my knowledge or consent. You watched me struggle while holding the power to help, doling out assistance according to your own timeline. It's not. In the exhibition? He interrupted. Another manipulation to force me back into the spotlight on your terms? Elise's face flushed. The exhibition was genuine. Your new work deserves recognition. But you never considered simply telling me the truth, Oliver pressed. You never thought I deserved to know who was pulling the strings. Would you have accepted my help if I'd offered it directly? Elise challenged. A librarian you barely acknowledged for years? The question hung between them, uncomfortable in its accuracy. You should leave, Elise finally said, voice tight with emotion. I crossed boundaries I shouldn't have. See that? Now, Oliver stood, suddenly exhausted. At the door, he turned back. I have one more question. What did it cost you, all this secret support? Elise looked at him directly for the first time since his arrival. Nothing I wasn't willing to give. In her eyes, Oliver saw the answer. She wouldn't voice the personal sacrifices. The financial strain, the emotional investment, with no expectation of return. And something else. A profound understanding of his music that few had ever demonstrated. He left without another word, the wind chimes, creating a dissonant farewell as he drove away into the gathering darkness. Harmonic Resolution 3. Months passed without contact. Oliver threw himself into teaching and composing, attempting to process the revelation of Elise's involvement in his life. He completed his piano and cello piece, now expanded into a more ambitious work he titled Invisible Counterpoint, a direct acknowledgement of the unseen influence that had shaped his recovery. The premiere was scheduled at Westridge College's modest recital hall. Oliver had sent an invitation to Elise's home address, but received no response. As the evening approached, he found himself scanning the audience, simultaneously hoping for and dreading her presence. She wasn't there. The performance proceeded. His first public premiere since the scandal. As the final notes faded, the audience rose in appreciative applause. Oliver acknowledged his performers, then stepped to the microphone. This composition began as something else entirely, he explained, but evolved when I discovered that what I thought was a solo journey was actually a duet all along. Sometimes the most important notes in music are the ones we don't immediately hear: the harmonics, the sympathetic vibrations, the resonance that shapes everything without announcing itself. Afterward, at the small reception, Dean Hargrove approached with congratulations and news. The conservatory curator sent her regrets about missing tonight's performance. She's accepted a position at the National Music Archive in Washington. Oliver felt an unexpected hollowness at this information. Elise was leaving, had perhaps already gone without closure to their complicated connection. The following day, he drove to her cottage on impulse, finding it with a for sale sign already posted. Through the window, he could see empty bookshelves. In vacant walls, he was too late. Or perhaps not. A familiar sound drew him around to the back garden, wine chimes moving in the breeze. Elise sat beneath them on a bench, surrounded by half-packed boxes. "I heard your piece premiered last night," she said without preamble. "I'm sorry I missed it. Are you?" Oliver challenged gently. "Or were you avoiding me?" "Both can be true." She gestured to the boxes. "I'm leaving next week." Oliver nodded, taking a seat beside her. "Washington is a significant opportunity. It's also 3,000 kilometers away," Elise added quietly. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the random music of the chimes. "I finished transcribing your new composition from the recording," Elise finally said. "It's for the archive." "It's extraordinary work, Oliver." "It's about you," he replied simply. "About us, if there is such a thing." Elise looked at him with surprise. "There isn't an us." "No," Oliver agreed. "There's been you supporting me, and me not seeing you. That's not a relationship. It's an imbalance." He reached into his jacket and removed a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. "This is for you. Not anonymously, not mysteriously. It's just one musician to another." Elise unwrapped it carefully to reveal a hand-bound manuscript, the original score of Invisible Counterpoint. With a dedication on the cover, "For E.W., who heard the music when no one else was listening." "I was angry," Oliver continued, "because you saw me at my worst and helped anyway. Because you believed in my work when I'd stopped believing. Because you made me confront the possibility that I wasn't actually the hero of my own recovery story." "Never wanted, I know," he interrupted. "You never wanted recognition. But relationships real, once require visibility. Both people seen, both acknowledged." Elise traced the dedication with her fingertip. "I don't know how to do that." "Better in the background." "I've applied for a guest lecturer position at Georgetown," Oliver said. "It would start next semester if I get it. ... You'd be in Washington," Elise finished, understanding dawning. "Where we could perhaps try something different," Oliver suggested. "Something with no secrets, no saviors, no debt. Just two people who connect through music, learning to compose something new together." Elise looked up at him, vulnerability and hope competing in her expression. "I don't know if I can be that visible. We'll take it measure by measure," Oliver promised. "The tempo marking is adagio con speranza," slowly, with hope. For the first time, Elise smiled without reservation. "That's a good time signature to begin with." Above them, the wind shifted, transforming the chime's random notes into something that, for just a moment, sounded remarkably like harmony. 6 months later, visitors to the National Music Archive's special exhibition on musical resurrection would discover a unique installation, Oliver Preston's Invisible Counterpoint, playing in a room where the only visible item was a single wind chime. The exhibition notes, curtained by Oliver Preston and Elise Winters, explained that sometimes the most profound music occurs in the spaces between notes, in the invisible connections that sustain us when everything else falls silent, and in a small apartment nearby, two people who had once occupied separate orbits of the same musical universe were carefully, deliberately learning to compose their lives together, no longer soloist and secret guardian, but equal partners in creating something neither could have written alone.